Welcome to Listen and Build. There's a widening gap in organizations today. On one side, we see exponential breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and digital transformation. On the other, we face human inertia, fear, resistance, and uncertainty about what's next. That gap is more than a technology problem, it's a leadership challenge. And here's the truth: you can't close that gap by pushing harder. You can bridge that gap by listening first and building second. In this program, you'll learn how to listen and build for effective leadership, to listen for priorities, to differentiate signal from noise, and to listen to what people truly value. You'll learn how to build trust, build alignment, and build momentum for lasting change. Let's begin. Satya Nadella at Microsoft is a leader who listens and builds. His turnaround at Microsoft is more than just technology. It was about building people and culture. As Nadella writes in his book Hit Refresh, listening was the most important thing I accomplished each day because it would build the foundation of leadership for years to come. Under Nadella, Microsoft co-created with users, empowered developers, and built collaboration across divisions. Listening became the foundation for innovation. In this session, you'll learn how to listen and build trust, momentum, and value to lead change. We begin with steps to identify key stakeholders. In a process of listening to resistance, you learn how to sort and prioritize insights, differentiate signal from noise, and how to close the loop from listening to action. The first step to listen and build is to identify key stakeholders. Who will be impacted by the change? Who can help or hinder the process? There are three stakeholder groups we must pay special attention to: end users, champions, and skeptics. End users are ones who know where processes break down. Listening to them ensures that you build solutions that are usable and relevant. Champions can influence others and advocate for what you're trying to do. Champions help to build momentum. Skeptics sharpen your thinking and reveal hidden obstacles. They will tell you what no one else will. They'll poke holes in your assumptions. When you map stakeholders across these roles, you ensure that your insights are holistic and not siloed. The people closest to the problem often hold the key to the solution. I invite you to take just a few minutes to list people and stakeholders from your organization who fit each of these roles. Ask yourself, who are the end users, the people who are closest to the problem, who experience the friction, who know exactly where processes break down? Who are the champions, the ones who lean forward, they're eager to try something new, and they're trusted by others? And who are the skeptics, the ones who will ask the hard questions? Don't overthink it, just write who comes to mind. Open up a Word document or an app for note-taking. Now pause this video and list people in each category and continue on. Take 5 to 10 minutes to complete this list. You can pause this video right now. In our peer learning session this week, you'll learn how to create a network map of stakeholders involved in your challenge. The network map will depict how each stakeholder is connected to the challenge, as well as the relationships between stakeholders. The brief video in the next slide is a preview of what we'll cover from a network perspective to listening and building. After you've identified key stakeholders, you can begin a process of listening. More specifically, listening to resistance. Why resistance? When leading change, we often focus on hitting the accelerator. With more urgency, more action. But here's the truth: pressing harder on the gas doesn't help if the brakes are still on. Resistance to change is like brakes in a car. When we listen to resistance, we learn where people feel uncertain, where the risks are, and where trust is missing. When we address those concerns, we're releasing the brakes. Chip Burr is the CEO of Levi Strauss and a leader known to have turned around the company and the brand. When Chip took on the role of CEO, his first priority was to conduct a listening tour, to meet and listen to members across his organization.
In his listening sessions, he constantly asks three questions. These are his questions. What are three things we should not change? What are three things we absolutely must change? What's one thing you're hoping I would do? This is a great example of listening to understand and listening to resistance and change. In the book Switch, Chip and Dan Heath provide a compelling image of how change happens. This image is useful in thinking about organizational change. The image is that of a rider and the elephant. The rider represents our rational mind. We make plans, establish direction. However, the rider sits on top of an elephant. The rider can only move as far as the elephant moves. The rider may direct the elephant, but the elephant needs more than just directions. What does the elephant represent? It represents our motivation and emotions. The same is true for change. The easy part is announcing the destination. The real work is moving the elephant. The elephant in the room is the motivation and emotions that's often overlooked in leading change. These are things we think but don't say, things we say but don't mean, and things we feel but can't name. Just like the rider and the elephant, if we only rely on rational statements and data to communicate change, and if we ignore people's human motivations and emotions, then it's likely that we've missed the elephant. Knowing where to go is different from feeling the need to change. To listen to resistance, you can use a method called painstorming. Unlike brainstorming, which focuses on ideas, painstorming focuses on problems and pain points. Painstorming questions include what's frustrating, what's getting in the way. By inviting people to share their concerns openly, we can turn resistance into insight. So why painstorming? Every change, no matter how positive, creates some sense of discomfort. People resist not because they're stubborn, but because something they value feels at risk. That's where painstorming comes in. Painstorming is the practice of exploring pain points deeply before jumping to solutions. It's a shift from product driven to problem driven innovation. It will help you uncover real obstacles that customers and employees face. When leading change, we often rush to solutions, but real change begins with understanding organizational pain. You can use this framework to guide you in the painstorming process. The pain framework helps us surface what's really getting in the way of progress. It represents four sources of organizational pain: P for priorities, A for anxiety, I for inertia, and N for noise. The pain of priorities happens when priorities are not clear or misaligned. Take a CRM rollout, for example. The priority with sales is to save time. Finance values better data, and leaders prioritize insight. Users have different priority for any one particular system. The pain comes when priorities are not understood or not met. Anxiety shows up as hesitation or fear, the fear of losing control or relevance. Inertia represents barriers in the system, outdated systems, rigid processes, and slow decisions that sap momentum. And noise is the communication clutter, mixed messages, and unclear ownership. When leaders can name the pain, you can start to align different stakeholders towards change. Painstorming is a conversational sequence that can help you uncover what's really happening behind resistance to change. We start with priorities because alignment is the foundation of momentum. You can ask, what's most important for you with this change? This question helps clarify what people value. Once we know what matters, we move to anxiety, the emotional side of change. You can ask, what concerns you about this change? This opens the door to fears about relevance, competence, or confidence. When leaders name those fears, resistance can ebb away. Next, inertia, where the organization itself might be holding things back. You can ask, where do things feel stuck, slow, or unnecessarily hard? This identifies structural barriers that frustrate progress.
Finally, let's explore noise, the confusion that clouds communication. You can ask what information feels unclear, inconsistent, or confusing for you. When people can't make sense of the message, they can't act with confidence. Together, these four questions move people from what people value to what they fear to what slows them down and what overwhelms them. This is the painstorming sequence. Let's look at Intuit and how it used painstorming to transform its culture and drive innovation across its teams. In the early 2000s, Intuit, the maker of TurboTax, QuickBooks, MailChimp, was facing slowing growth. Competitors were innovating faster, and Intuit was launching products that did not really stick with customers. Leaders at Intuit realized something uncomfortable. They had become too good at solving problems that wasn't actually validated. They were solution storming instead of pain storming. Intuit's chief executive at that time, Scott Cook, and his innovation team engaged in a painstorming approach. In a painstorm, team members talk to and observe customers in their offices and homes rather than sit in their own office and drum up solutions. Teams were asked to listen with the following questions: whose pain are we solving? How does this pain show up in their life and workflow? Have we seen it, heard it, or experienced it ourselves? Intuit's team observed young taxpayers struggling with complex tax forms. They saw how filing taxes could be stressful and time-consuming with multiple documents. Through weekly prototypes and user testing, they built SnapTax, an app that lets users file taxes by snapping a photo of documents. The result, one of Intuit's fastest growing products, born directly from observing pain. But the real story isn't about SnapTax. It's about what painstorming did to Intuit's culture. It taught the teams to solve for real pain points and not just the ideas in their head. You've listened to your end users, champions, and skeptics. The next critical step is to sort and prioritize. This is where strategy begins. Listening can lead to a flood of feedback and ideas. You should not build based on the loudest requests. You need a disciplined way to rank and focus. You can do so by evaluating potential projects along two dimensions. Value. How much strategic impact will this initiative deliver? This includes ROI, customer experience, operational efficiency, or competitive advantage. Resistance. How much pushback or complexity will you face in making it happen? The value resistance matrix is a fast and visual way to sort through many ideas and focus resources where they matter the most. Insights and solutions can be scored and placed on this matrix. In this matrix, projects fall into four quadrants. Build now projects are those that offer high value with minimal pushback. Build momentum projects are high value but face strong resistance. Distractions are easy to implement but don't move the needle. Build traps are low value and high resistance. Avoid them at all costs. The Build Now quadrant are for projects with high strategic value and low resistance. These are the kinds of projects you want to start with, especially if you're trying to build credibility, momentum, and buy-in. Let's walk through examples that have been built in organizations. First up, automated invoice processing. Account payable teams spend hours matching purchase orders, receipts, and approvals. AI can automate that. It delivers real savings and eliminates tedious work. At Puma, the sportswear company, the implementation of AI-powered invoice automation using Medius resulted in faster approvals and stronger supplier relationships. Second, AI document summarization. Enterprise AI tools can scan long contracts or reports and pull out key points. It's not about replacing experts, it's about making their work faster. This is a useful productivity tool. The third example, AI resume screening tools. These tools analyze resumes at scale based on criteria established by the hiring company.
AI can flag the top candidates so recruiters can focus their time where it matters most, on conversations with candidates. This was adopted at Unilever in their early career hiring process. All these are projects that solve real problems, use good data, require minimal change management, and most of all, deliver visible wins fast. Build momentum projects promise high value, but they come with significant resistance. A good example is bias detection in hiring algorithms. While it can lead to more equitable outcomes and better hiring decisions, it may trigger internal debates, compliance concerns, or fear of exposing systemic issues. These initiatives require executive sponsorship, change management, and sometimes culture change. They're worth doing, but you need a thoughtful and phased approach. In the distraction quadrant, projects are easy to launch but deliver little value. These projects can be easy to implement and may even generate excitement. But here's the problem, they don't actually solve meaningful problems. As one example, predictive analytics for metrics that don't drive decisions. You might have an AI forecasting model, but if no team actually uses that data, it's insight without impact. Distractions are costly, not because they're hard, but because they pull focus away from what matters. Build traps pose the biggest risk. These are projects that sound strategic and ambitious, but if you dig deeper, you realize they're solving a marginal problem at a massive cost. Here's an example of a build trap, an AI-driven strategic forecasting model with poor data. Sounds impressive, but if your data is limited or inconsistent, the model's output won't be actionable. The build trap is common in organizations. It happens when we jump straight to building before asking, who are we building this for? And how will they use it? So how do we avoid this trap? First, identify key stakeholders. Second, listen to resistance. And third, sort and prioritize insights. And finally, close the loop from listening to action. Listen and build is a way to build lasting value. Let's cover the final step, to close the loop to build trust and momentum. Step 4 is where you close the loop from listening to action. This step is critical. Closing the loop doesn't mean solving every issue. It means being transparent. Here's what we've heard, here's what we're doing, and here's why. Listening creates an expectation for change. You close the loop by affirming what you've heard, set realistic expectations for action, and follow up on what you've done. Here's a roadmap and summary of 6 essential moves to listen and build. They'll guide you to lead change effectively at any level. Let's walk through the 6 moves. First, listen to resistance. Resistance is a signal. It reveals fears, doubts, and friction. It also reflects values and what people stand to lose or protect. Second, brainstorm before you pitch. Start with questions, not just solutions. It builds trust. Third, decode resistance with pain, progress, anxiety, inertia, and needs. This gives structure to what you're hearing. It surfaces the unspoken and turns resistance into insight. Fourth, sort and prioritize. Not every concern is equal. Focus on what matters most, not just what's the loudest. Fifth, close the loop to build trust. Share what you've heard and how it's shaped the outcome. When people feel heard, they're more willing to contribute. And finally, build momentum through visible wins. When people see progress, they begin to believe in the process. To sum this all up, listen first, build trust, and create momentum. Thank you for your time. I look forward to working with you as you listen and build your project, product, or service to have a lasting impact on others.